So with NFL offseason moves that have already happened, it's easy to say, hey, this move was good for this guy, and it's talked about often. Let's talk about a couple situations where a specific NFL offseason move was bad for somebody when we're looking at fantasy football. The Mike Gesicki move was obviously bad for Hunter Henry, even if you think that Gesicki is going to play this like Jacoby Myers slot role. Year one in New England for Hunter Henry, he did have 75 targets and 9 touchdowns, but he dropped to 59 targets and 2 touchdowns this past season, playing the same amount of games. We can also say in 2022, Mike Gesicki had a big drop-off in his numbers. In 2021, he had 112 targets, 73 catches, and 780 receiving yards, but in 2022, he was competing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle for targets. That's a big difference between what Hunter Henry was competing with in New England. In Gesicki's 5 seasons, he's had 3 with 85-plus targets, 2 with over 700 receiving yards. Bill Belichick has been quoted in the past speaking about Gesicki not being a conventional tight end and his impacts in the passing game. Next up, Brandon Cooks was a negative impact for Michael Gallup now that Cooks is a Cowboy. 2022 for Michael Gallup followed an ACL tear the year prior. He just had 39 catches, though, in 14 games this past season. Gallup has also had just 1 season over 11 fantasy points per game. In comes Brandon Cooks to Dallas, who has had 6 seasons over 1,000 receiving yards, 6 seasons ranging from 114 to 134 targets. Michael Gallup has been outside the top 50 for wide receivers the last 3 seasons in target share. Even if Dalton Schultz is gone, you have a guy that is coming into the system who has done nothing but earn targets in 4 different homes. Jacoby Myers is now a Las Vegas Raider, which is bad for Hunter Renfrow, who had a major 2021 season. In 2022, though, he only played in 10 games, but averaged the lowest amount of fantasy points per game that he has in his career. Yes, Darren Waller is a New York Giant, but we have Josh McDaniels entering his 2nd year as the Raiders head coach. And he's basically saying here, hey, we do have this slot wide receiver, but there's this other slot wide receiver that I used to work with back in New England, and we need him here. To me, that says something. We do have a new quarterback for the Raiders, but in 2022, Davante Adams was number 1 in target share with 32.6%. Jacoby Myers finished the last 3 seasons number 29, number 20, and number 24 in target share for the wide receiver position. This could mean this guy being the 3rd target in this offense, maybe, which to me means a lot of fantasy football inconsistency. It's a no-brainer here, but Darren Waller being a New York Giant is devastating for stocks in Daniel Bellinger. Bellinger played 12 games as a rookie, 2 double-digit fantasy weeks. There was hope that he could have a bigger role in 2023 as the tight end 1. He did only average 2.9 targets, 2.5 receptions, and 22.3 receiving yards per game. Also only averaged 6.3 fantasy points per game as a rookie, but there was hope. Darren Waller's had seasons of 93, 146, and 117 targets, 2 seasons over 1,100 receiving yards. He's had 2 top 3 fantasy finishes for the tight end position. He has had a history of some injuries, but when healthy, it's very easy to argue he is a top 3 tight end, top 5 minimal. Bellinger goes from a young tight end with some aspirations for an expanded role to a tight end handcuff, I guess. Hear me out to a degree on this one, but I do think Robert Tonyan has a ceiling impact on Cole Kmet for fantasy. I still like Cole Kmet. I'm a big fan of Cole Kmet, but he does. Kmet had 4 top 6 finishes in 2022. This included 2 weeks over 20 fantasy points. In 2022, Robert Tonyan did play a full season, but this was after he tore his ACL the year prior. Back in 2020, he was the tight end 4, which was guided by those 11 receiving touchdowns. So we can still say that Cole Kmet is the tight end 1 in Chicago. I think the fear for me is that even if Robert Tonyan is more of a blocking tight end, that there's the chance that Robert Tonyan is the 2021 Jimmy Graham in Chicago for Cole Kmet, a.k.a. a guy that is going to snipe receiving touchdowns away, which is a fantasy impact. And lastly, I made a video about this already, but I do think that David Montgomery, his presence in Detroit, impacts both his and DeAndre Swift's fantasy stocks. If these guys do enter the season coexisting, that takes away the workhorse aspirations of the dual threat running back in DeAndre Swift, but also can take away the pass catching from David Montgomery, which is what has helped him in the past finish high for the running back position. So now instead of like one guy getting a majority of the work, we got an early down running back, maybe a guy that's going to be an impact in the red zone with the pass catching running back. So they probably are slightly hurting each other's ceilings here. And if you've made it this far in the video, you a real one, go check out the P2W Fantasy Patreon. So much content all in one spot in that subscriber Discord.